Welcome, dear viewers. Today we will be discussing about library consortia. I am G. Mahesh. I belong to the National Science Library at the National Institute of Science Communication and Information Resources. Now, what is library consortia? All of us know what libraries are. Now, library consortia, the term is of course used in plural. So many consortia, multiple consortia together are called library consortia. And what is a consortium? So a library consortium is a group of libraries. Consortium is basically a group, and library consortium is a group of libraries who partner to coordinate activities, share resources, and combine expertise. So let's pay attention to some of the keywords in this meaning or definition of a library consortium. So one is it's a group of libraries, and why is this group of libraries formed? One, they to coordinate activities. Okay, so what are the activities that they coordinate? We will discuss that. The second is share resources. All of us know that the resources in a library, in a traditional library, they are printed books. In a digital library, they are the digital collections. So whatever the resources of a library, so these libraries have got their own unique collections and they have their own unique resources. So a consortium shares these resources. So the libraries within a consortium share the resources amongst themselves. When I say themselves, so one library takes the resources from another libraries and pass it on to the users, to their own users. And they combine expertise. So we will also discuss what these expertise mean. So library consortium, I repeat, is a group of libraries who partner to coordinate activities, share resources, and combine expertise. So why do we need to do this? So we have heard about libraries. Libraries have existed since ancient times. We have heard the names of great libraries like the Nalanda University Library of the 12th century. We have heard about the Alexandria Library. So these libraries have existed independently for centuries. So a library is an institution in itself that collects information and provides information to users. So library as an institution that has been existing independently. Today we suddenly talk about libraries having to form consortium, having to form groups, having to partner amongst themselves to coordinate activities, to share resources, to combine expertise. So why has this need arose? So we will discuss this. So libraries have in the recent years moved from being independent to becoming interdependent. Okay, so why has that happened? So that is something that we are trying to answer. This has happened, one, because there has been an exponential growth of information sources. All of you are aware of the laws of library science, and you must have heard about this law that library is a growing organism. So library is expanding. So what we mean by libraries expanding or is a growing organism is that libraries acquire or collect more and more information for the benefit of their users. So in that terms, irrespective of it's a physical library or a digital library, so there is more and more information that is collected in the library, and by virtue of that, the library is a growing organism. But then with the digital technologies, with digital information, what we have seen is that in the present, the digital era, there has been an exponential growth of information sources. And so much so that it has actually become impossible for an institution to become independent or to be self-sufficient, or in other words, to have all the to acquire just about everything. To give you an example, let us talk about journals. As you know, journals are a scholarly form of communication or a scholarly medium of communication, research journals. And if you look at the number of journals, journals came to being in the 17th century. And in the 17th century, there were 10 journals. Now today, in the 21st century, there are something like 40 to 50,000 journals. And you know, these journals are a very expensive information source. So at best, an institution can have 5,000 journals or 10,000 journals or 12,000 journals, but it's practically impossible for an institution to have all the 40,000 journals. There is no need, and it is impractical, and it's very expensive. It's even if someone has, if someone wants to, it's not possible, because it's extremely expensive to acquire or collect all the information sources. But then the user needs access to information, and it is the objective mandate or the very purpose for which libraries exist, to provide information. So if the library does not have that information, the library has to obtain that information from somewhere and give it to the user, the general philosophy of libraries. So this has led to libraries moving from independent entities to collaborating or cooperating entities depending on one another. Now, the sharing of resources and collaboration of shared goals enable libraries to deliver higher quality of services than they would be able to deliver on their own. So, if a library was to exist independently, it is very likely that it may fall short of material resource, which is the information resource, or it may fall short of financial resource for acquiring the material, or it may fall short of the requisite human resource to take the library programs forward. For example, automation projects or digitization projects, creation of specialized databases. Sometimes the independent library may not be equipped to initiate or embark on such activities without the assistance or cooperation of other libraries. So that is why the sharing of resources within library consortia make it possible to have or achieve shared goals, thereby enabling libraries to deliver a higher quality of service, a higher level of user satisfaction or fulfilling user needs than if the library existed as an independent entity. Now, even before library consortia came to be formed, there were ways and means by which libraries used to fulfill information needs of the users. I am sure in another course you must have heard about interlibrary loan, or you must have learned about interlibrary loans. So interlibrary loans existed even before library consortia came into being. The organized groups of libraries came into being. So in interlibrary loan, which could be part of a library consortia, or which could exist without a library consortia, is when two libraries form, and two or more libraries have this arrangement wherein they borrow material from one library and provide it to the user, and the other library, whenever in need, borrow a material from the other library and gives it to the its own users. So interlibrary as a system that allowed libraries to borrow and share materials across geographic locations existed even before library consortia came into being. But with library consortium, the activities go beyond the interlibrary loans, the ones that we discussed. So consortia cover much more than the simple interlibrary loan arrangements that libraries practiced. Now, what are they? As I mentioned earlier, they shared experiences or expertise and best practice. By way of a hypothetical example, one library in the network, supposing, has an expert in creating a database, and the other library does not have an expertise. The libraries in the consortium, by mutual arrangement and abiding by the agreement, can have the expertise of the library that has this expertise in another library which does not have that expertise. So that is one of the advantages that library consortia offer. The other is to pool the training resources between institutions. So one is sharing experiences or expertise, and the other is bringing together. So here in this case, we are talking about the libraries in a consortia, each having a certain expertise, and here all this expertise are pulled together towards a common goal to create something which would not have been possible by one library, or the resource available in one library not being able to do that, but then aggregating or bringing these resources together. So that can be human resources, or that can be the combined catalog which captures information about all the information resources available in these libraries. The libraries can also collectively fund some research programs. It's not very commonplace in library consortia in India, but then that is a possibility and something that is practiced in other countries. So funding research programs, and also it is very important for libraries to carry out advocacy activities. So these advocacy activities can be with the funding organizations. It can be with publishers, where they can come together and raise certain issues which affect all the institutions or all the libraries in the consortium. So this is a classic example of the proverb unity is strength. So the libraries come together and they can negotiate better prices for resources, get more value for money. So this has been happening in the last a couple of decades in institutions in India. Now, supposing one is a a library today is an independent entity. Now, is it useful, or is it better to create a new consortium, or is it better to join an existing consortium? This is a question that requires consideration on several points before it can be decided. Some consortia have an entry fees for joining, and also may have an annual fees which a member of the consortia needs to contribute to avail of the facilities and services that the consortia provides. So you may want to, the library may want to decide whether to pay the fees for joining the consortia, whether that fees is something that the consortia can afford. Is the library going to get the value for money for the fees that the library would be paying? So these are some questions that the libraries should answer before deciding whether to join a consortia or not. What is the saving that the library has? What is what are the obligations on the library itself other than the entry fee? Of course, I mentioned about some entry fee that needs to be paid. Apart from that, there would be other obligations on the libraries that join a consortia in terms of sharing of resources, pooling resources, working on a common cause or a common objective. So is the library equipped to contribute to that? So these are some considerations that a library should think of before joining a consortium. The other is to create, like-minded libraries. When I say like-minded, many times it will, as is seen, even in consortia, in many consortia in India, the members or the libraries in the consortia, in a consortium, are similar libraries. For example, umbrella organizations like the DRDO or the UGC or the CSIR or the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. So these are umbrella organizations, and there are a number of institutions under each of these umbrella organizations. Like say the CSIR has got about 38 laboratories, and each of these laboratories have libraries. The same is true for the Department of Science and Technology, or the Defense Research and Development Organization, or the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, or the Medical Research, or the University Grants Commission. So now institutions under one umbrella organization, they have similar objectives, or they have similar characteristics. I would say that is a better word to use. They would have similar characteristics in terms of rules, regulations, and so on and so forth. So it would be easier for the group of libraries under an umbrella organization to come together. So before joining a existing consortia, it might be useful to consider whether the consortium that a library intends to join has got similar characteristics or attributes. So these are some of the considerations one needs to think of before deciding whether to create a consortium or to join an existing consortium. And of course, by joining a consortium, a library's visibility will greatly increase. So this wouldn't need much explanation, and it's very logical that when you serve as an independent entity, one is serving only its own users and are limited. There is a boundary within which the library provides its services and also offer or conduct various activities. But when one involves or one becomes a partner or a partner library within a consortia, then the level of collaboration or the degree to which the services are offered gets expanded. So a library in a consortium will be expected to engage with other libraries in the consortium, will be expected to provide services to other members in the consortium, and these exchanges, these collaborative programs, these cooperative activities will enhance the visibility of the library much faster than if the library is going to stay in a or is going to function independently and provide services only to its users. The consortia, also library consortia, also improve communications and relationships. We see that there are frequent and often communications happening not only about services and activities that the libraries provide, but also with respect to common issues, common problems, advocacy programs. So these are areas on which these members of the consortia regularly communicate, and that improves the relationships across these institutions and help in achieving common goals much faster than if these libraries are to function independently. And it encourages cross-disciplinary cooperation as well as collaborations. This is something which we discussed. So the library consortia, as we know in India, we should discuss some names. So for example, the UGC has got the UGC Infonet library consortia that serves the universities in the country, that serves colleges in the country by way of provisioning electronic access to electronic journals. Similarly, within the CSIR and DST, there is a National Knowledge Resource Consortium, or the NKRC, that is administered by the CSIR, National Institute of Science Communication and Information Resources, or CSIR NISCARE. So this is another aspect that one needs to remember, which is that in library consortium there can be one coordinating organization, which such as NISCARE, a coordinating organization, or in the case of the UGC Infonet, the UGC Inflibnet is the coordinating organization, which takes care of day-to-day operations of the consortium, including the administrative aspects and all that. So there is one lead organization, and then all the other member organizations are active participants, are active collaborators within the consortium. And in India, we have about a dozen consortia. We have a consortium in the for the DRDO group of institutions, for the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, so it's an agricultural consortium. There is a medical institutions consortium. Then in the area of atomic energy, there is a consortium. There is also a consortium for technological institutions. So there are a number of consortium in India, and this has become a norm now. The consortia approach to licensing electronic resources have become a norm. And with electronic resources, it has become much easier to, or I would much easier as well as practical to collectively license resources, so that libraries have larger access to content, and it's a debate whether to say that it's cost effective or not. There are different schools of thought on that, but then definitely there is a wider access, a greater access to content that individual libraries have. So it's not just about the access to resources, but then, as I mentioned, these consortia also work on other aspects, creating the common catalog by which they can access resources, and groups of institutions have also come together to create common automated solutions. For example, there are consortia in India who have taken a conscious decision to have an open source software across all its libraries, so which was not there in the past. So prior to a cooperative approach, different institutions used different software for automating their libraries. But after coming together, the libraries decided to automate their libraries with the same open source software. So it goes beyond collective licensing of resources, but largely speaking, the consortia in India largely use or form consortia to license electronic resources. Now, with many consortia across the world, as I said, in India we have a dozen consortia, and every country has got different consortium. So there is an international coalition. So there is a consortium of consortia. So all these different consortia in different countries have come together to form an international coalition of consortia, which is actually a consortium of consortia. So this is an international organization where at a global level discuss about the common issues that the different consortia in the different countries face. And that is very important, particularly with regard to the licensing of resources that I mentioned, because today with whether it is books, whether it is databases, whether it is electronic journals, more and more content is available in digital form, number one, and these that are available in digital forms are predominantly on licensing terms. So rather than acquiring content, the libraries are licensing content, and these licensing are governed by licensing agreements. And as we know, licensing agreements are typically legal documents that contain legal language, which again may not be understood by, or rather than saying understood, it may not be very easy on all libraries to understand these legal documents and sign individual agreements. So this is where again consortia can help, because on behalf of the various institutions, the consortiums license one agreement, and all the institutions in the consortia have access to the content of the various publishers. So friends, in a nutshell, library consortia has been around for a couple of decades now, more than a couple of decades, and prior to the library consortia, we had library networks, and even prior to library networks, the interlibrary loans was a common practice. But over a period of time, with the changes that are taking place, and with the technological possibility of better engagement and greater connectivity, the consortia approach, where libraries can come together has become much more meaningful today than ever in the past. On that note, we end this discussion on library consortium. Thank you.